Another day, another load of the coalition's lies to quite easily debunk. My weapon of choice this time is their very own budget. Let's get to this.
The member for Higgins has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister update the House on how the stability and certainty of a strong budget guarantees the delivery of essential services Australians rely on? And is the Prime Minister aware of how alternative approaches to the budget would impact these services?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr Speaker, as we said at the last election and have said for many, many years, the ability to guarantee the essential services that Australians rely on, be it in hospitals, be it in schools, disabilities, aged care packages, in-home aged care packages, disability support, Mr Speaker, all of these depend on a strong economy and a strong economy that can underpin a strong budget. And, Mr Speaker, a strong economy is one that has produced almost 1.5 million jobs over the last 6 years. It's a strong economy is one that has ensured that over the last 3 years we have consecutive monthly increases in employment for 36 months, and that is the first time we've ever seen this in country since February 1978, which is when records began on these measures, Mr Speaker. And it is the fact that we've been able to get Australians off welfare and into work which has been the central component of strengthening the budget, which has seen the budget coming back into surplus this year. And when you can actually manage an economy, and when you can manage your discipline on spending and get it under control and bring the budget back to surplus, then you can also at the same time look Australians directly in the eye, as we did at the last election, and say we can guarantee the essential services you rely on because we know how to manage the economy and we know how to manage a budget. And that means we have guaranteed record funding to every school on the basis of student needs, some $310 billion in our schools.
The member for Sydney has been warned. That's her final warning. The Prime Minister has
So not only record spending on our schools and our students, guaranteed funding, fully funding the National Disability Insurance Scheme through a $140 billion investment in the capabilities of Australians through that scheme, Mr Speaker. Record health and hospitals funding with an extra $31 billion through the National Health Agreement. Supporting the increase in bulk billing in Medicare to the record rate of 86.2% last financial year, meaning some 86 out of every 100 visits to the GP are free, fully funded by a government that knows how to manage a budget, exercise discipline on their finances and support a stronger economy. Increasing investment to the pharmaceutical benefits scheme, some 2,200 new or amended items listed on the PBS, and that represents an average of around 30 listings per month at an overall cost of $10.6 billion and $7 billion extra in childcare subsidies paid to more than 1.1 million families and $1 billion extra every year on supporting aged care, delivering the essential services Australians rely on because our government knows how to support a stronger economy and knows how to manage and deliver a strong budget position that gives Australians the resilience and the insurance in the areas of uncertainty that they face in the years ahead.
Before I even had this channel, I remember thinking, oh, it'd be so easy to expose these guys just by playing what they say over the budget, and now here we are. So I try to leave the numbers on there long enough for people to really soak them in, and yes, the minus means that's how much less they're getting, and let's just admire this. They are that good with the budget that they somehow got the total net capital investment, the total of all the different categories, to be less than how much they plan to spend on defence. Now, ain't that something? Did you hear the commotion they made when he mentioned the NDIS? Yeah, well, let's continue on to another question.
Call the member for Moncrief.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme and Minister for Government Services. Will the Minister outline to the House how the Morrison government's stable and certain approach to the budget guarantees the delivery of essential services Australians rely on, including through the NDIS, and is the Minister aware of any risks associated with alternative approaches?
The Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme and Minister for Government Services.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the member for Moncrief for her question and her commitment to the 1,044 participants in her electorate. Mr Speaker, this morning many of us from both sides of the aisle, in fact 30 of us, all attended the Power of Speech breakfast, including the two paediatricians in the House, the member for MacArthur and the member for Higgins, who both spoke beautifully. And we had the privilege of listening to 6 little children share their experiences of growing up profoundly deaf. And all 6 children, and they were gorgeous, Annie, Aretha, Eamon, Garvey, Hannah and Zia. All of them have cochlear implants, and they all delivered a wonderful 2-minute speech about their life, their hopes and their dreams. So this morning's event, My Hearing Future, is what the NDIS is all about. It's about futures, in this case supporting children in need, not just with the cochlear implant, but with the early intervention supports that we all know, make such a huge difference. It's why one of the government's first actions post-election was to put in place the early childhood, early intervention remediation strategy, because of the massive surge of children coming through the scheme, where 4,500 children were waiting longer than 50 days to get their plan. It's now down to 1,600 children. By Christmas, it will be 0. These kids are just 6 stories of the 500,000 participant stories that will come into the scheme over the next 5 years, a scheme that's fully funded, is uncapped, that is secure now and into the future. Now, we all know we can only do that with a strong, stable budget. There's no other way to have an uncapped scheme. We must have a strong economy. We must have strong jobs growth. It's why we're thrilled to see what the Treasurer and the Prime Minister have delivered in 36 months of consecutive job growth. And because of this budget position, the government's—
Alright, sorry about that. Sorry for having to expose you to so long of these people's nonsense. But I wanted to also show you how they do a decent attempt at passing as human, as in like passing for people with compassion or empathy or that care about other people. But then it's like watching a movie you've already seen again and everything's different, where once you know the actual facts, everything they say seems so ghoulish and abhorrent, almost like they're bragging about getting away with screwing us over. So yeah, let's have a look and see if these are true.
Fully funding the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Fully funding the National Disability Insurance Scheme
is a scheme that's fully funded.
Alright, I have last year's and this year's budget top 20 programs by expenses. And under the NDIS, last year you can see that there was meant to be 16 billion, but then over here it says what they spent was only around 12 billion. That's a 4 billion, give or take, underspend. So every time you hear them mention the surplus, just keep in the back of your mind that surplus is off the backs of Australians with disabilities. And while we're here, we should have a look at the future projections of NDIS funding. So 2018-19 there was a 4 billion underspend, and then 19-20 said there was going to be 20. Apparently there's only 17, so another 3 billion underspend. And then 2021, all looks like they're getting close, but they're still skimming some off the top. And that's the same for 2021 to 2022, where they're trying not to be so obvious about it, and yet they claim that it's fully funded. You see, these guys are slimy, and I can see how in their head the mental gymnastics they're doing to make this the truth, where they probably are giving every dollar to the NDIS that's designated in the funding of the new amount. But that's like if you had a housemate take your 2 litres of orange juice out the fridge and you're like, oi, replace that. And they do, with the same brand, but 1 litre. What do you mean, my guy? Oh, it's a full bottle of orange juice. And then they take it again and replace it with a fruit box. And you're like, come on. And they're like, I wouldn't know what you're talking about. It's a full thing of juice. That's what I think they would have to do to make this the truth in their head.